Hey everybody, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I'm your host, Andrew Davis, and this episode is brought to you by my sponsors, BCW Supplies. Use code POPANIMECOMICS to get 10% off your entire order. As furthermore, you could also buy my shirt, which helps to support this show, and it is a Gundam shirt making fun of Taco Bell. Gundam, as I stated, the most interesting man in the world, so go buy that shirt. And then I also have these bad boys still up in my eBay store. They're $10. Prices are raising up in the next day or two. So if you want a metal card from my Kickstarter, this is the only way how to get it. And this guy, who's the cosplayer DJ Corrupt, was just at Philly Fan Expo up in Philadelphia about a week and a half ago. So very cool right there. So obviously, though, I have with me comic creator Braiden Cox. So welcome back to the show, man.
Hey, it's always good to be back.
Yeah, no, I am very excited for you to be back, and a lot's going on, and I do miss some of your Kickstarters. Obviously, we'll get busy, but you got one right now going on with It Was Nobody. And so before we really get into the Kickstarter and what's going on, what is the basic premise of the book for those who are hearing about it for the first time?
So it follows a young boy who deals with hardships at home, like child abuse and drug addicted parents. And no matter how much he's tried to get help, no one believes him or wants to help him. And then one day that changes when he meets a mysterious monster.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that happens in this book, and it's very interesting. And I definitely want to break it down, but I am curious because we are dealing with really sensitive issues and complicated issues and things that are not so pleasant per se that no kid should have to ever face. What was this like really even coming up with this idea? Because I feel a lot of comic writers and writers in today's world are terrified to tackle difficult subjects like this.
So I actually got this idea like a long time ago. My parents, they did foster care, and we would always get these kids from other homes, and we would hear these horror stories about like how the kids, they would talk about what happened to them. They would inform us what happened to the kids, and a lot of the times, like some of the older kids, they were like, "Oh, I just really wish I had someone that would listen to me and would have listened to me the first time, so we could have avoided this whole thing." And the nobody part, I kind of got from my dad. Whenever we would get in trouble, uh, he would always be like, who did this? And we'd always be like, nobody did it. And he'd be like, oh, well, this nobody guy is really gonna be in trouble when I find him. So it's kind of like a mash of just like family inside jokes and.
You guys, you should tell me a story about
And
No, that's not stuff we can technically talk about.
and so to even dive further into this, and obviously into this story, one, you good? You good?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Well, I'm making sure anything could happen live, guys.
Yeah,
Anything could happen
no.
live. I've come to that realization that anything could happen live, and if you're listening in podcast format and you're catching it second wind, I'm sorry, you're missing all the live fun here. But even to go further into this and really go into the story a little bit, obviously we have a kid named Cody who wishes that he could have a family that loves him, but he comes home to parents who all they want to do is do drugs. I don't know if it's pot, I don't know if it's something else, but clearly that's all they care about, and they don't want the kid. And every issue that they have as a problem, these two parents, is Cody's fault. I think it's Cody, right?
Yeah.
And so and it becomes very interesting. And obviously he's dealing with all this abuse. And so what was that like? Because that is a very sensitive topic for a lot of people.
It's always going to be sensitive, but I feel it's also one of those things that people need to understand, like this actually happens, like it actually happens a lot. And there are times where, like I said, when my family used to do foster care, like one of the biggest things the kids would talk about was, I just wish I had someone that was there for me, which is I kind of like made a urban myth kind of thing, the nobody's a creature. He protects abuse children. It kind of takes the reversed role of like, because most cryptids, they go after the bad kids. This time, nobody goes after the bad adults.
Yeah, and even going further, because we're obviously going to get to the twist in your story in a second here.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I really appreciated, because I read it and you sent me a preview copy, is that we really get the abuse from his level. A lot of times when we're dealing with things that we hear this, and obviously there's the Law and Order Special Victims Unit, and there's other TV shows that have tackled these issues. A lot of the time, we're getting almost from a third party and maybe even a little bit more of an aerial view, but we really get it from Cody's perspective, and we see it from his angle. And it's kind of nice that a kid is telling it like it is versus an adult or a police officer or another
Right.
person, or even it being witnessed. And that's a very nice touch because it makes it very personal rather than making it more distant or more professional. And so what
Mhm.
was that like? Because it is a nice touch what you did with this. And I think it's a very nice writing touch, but it's also not front and center in the book as well, which really shows how well this was thought out and planned.
Yeah, I like I put a lot of effort into it, and like I compiled a lot of like I kind of like sat down and compiled like a lot of the stories I wrote, like I heard from these kids from years ago, and I just kind of like reviewed them, and like I would put myself in their shoes and be like, oh, what's gonna happen, and then it's like, oh, this would be terrifying to actually experience, like your parents getting mad at you and breaking your arm, or you know
Yeah, and it's fascinating. And then obviously there's a lot of heart warm, almost breaking of your heart type moments in this story as well, where he goes and he hides, and he's almost hiding like underneath the entire floorboard, which is just an insane moment. And that kind of ushers in, I guess, this monster slash this creature, which really changes the entire story, because this creature is very interesting and very symbolic of everything
mhm.
that is going on. So just to even throw up a picture of this creature, obviously that's what the creature looks like. And so what was this like even developing this creature first and foremost before we even get into the symbolism of this creature and
Right,
what
yeah, so it was tough. Like I went through several different concepts, and I was trying to decide something like, I kind of wanted something with like, at first I wanted something with like no eyes, no like dedicated facial features, kind of like like how Slender Man kind of is. Like he doesn't really have like facial features, and then I kind of evolved it into, well, what if he had everything except for eyes? So, there's just like these empty sockets where his eyes are, and I went through a lot of it, and then when I teamed up with my new artist, uh sorry. Yeah, when I teamed up with my new artist, she was like, "Hey, what's the kind of design you have?" And I was like, "Well, this was the original design. He's supposed to be amorphous, which is without a shape. Like he's supposed to be very like flexible with his shape, and he doesn't always like. And as you read the book, you know that he doesn't always hold his humanoid shape. Like he has different shapes, and he's just like he just kind of like goes with the flow kind of thing. And so she's like, okay, well, I'm gonna do this, and she said she took a little bit of inspiration from Ghibli, from the No Face, and she was like, well, this is kind of what I did, and I looked at it and I was like, oh my god, that's perfect. Like, oh, you muted yourself.
how I muted myself. Wow, that's a first for me. But all jokes aside, without me muting myself, let's even talk about this, because one of the things that is fascinating is obviously monsters, and especially in horror, really make up the story. Where
Mhm.
I don't think the abuse is a catalyst for this monster, but it's not what makes up this story and really gets me thinking and talking and analyzing what's going on. And you could read it just as a monster sort of dealing with abusive parents and going after them, but there's a lot more going on. And so, what was this like really building out this creature? Because it really does set the tone,
Mhm.
especially with the way the monster operates slash creature slash I guess, entity, for lack of a better word. 'Cause I don't even know if monster is the correct
Right.
word in this circumstance.
Definitely
And so
more.
what is this like for you to really build out that idea and also work through it? Because character development and how characters looks makes a huge difference. And you've read plenty of bad books where like this character design is whack and it makes or breaks a book in a lot of
Mhm.
ways.
Yeah, no, it was hard. Like I said, I had to do a lot of research. I wanted to make sure that I was making a monster that wasn't just your average, psycho killer or creature that or like your average cryptid. I wanted a monster that was like I wanted people to connect with, people that were like it's like I would love if this monster showed up to help, like help out kids. I wanted to make something where people could actually like reflect and talk about how much they, you know, wish that someone was there for them, like, this monster was there for Cody. And as I even developed Cody's stuff, like as you were talking about how he's hiding in the floorboards, and like I had a bunch of like minor details added in there to make it look like he was there a lot, hiding. Like he has pillows there, he has a blanket there, he has toys and stuffed animals there. Like it's like I kind of wanted it to make it look like that was his safe space. And
Yeah, to even talk about that as well, because this is obviously something that is very interesting with Cody, because this is a place that he clearly goes to and he feels comfortable. The fact that he even knows where to put his shoes and that he knows somebody's going to hit him and he puts his shoes somewhere else so they think he's in one place, but he's in another. I mean, it's clearly not something that was a one off at that
Mhm.
point. It's something that is repeated and it's fascinating. But even to talk about the monster's personality, and I'm calling him a monster for because I can't think of a better word here, but it's very interesting, this monster, because it does befriend Cody initially, and it sort of sneaks in to Cody's life, and it slowly becomes more and more aggressive. Where at first is saying, "You're a kid, you can play, and let's play," and solves an issue of as I was saying, it further goes into saying, "Hey, let's go grab, something to eat," and then it sort of attacks, I guess, Cody's mom or foster parent, but doesn't take it a step up, and then it just keeps escalating the entire, I guess, attack slash revenge, and then
Mhm.
the ending is something that is very much a twist that shows sort of the true nature of really what this monster is, and not everything's a happy ending. And so, what was this like? Because it is very symbolic. Because it's
Yeah,
a
so it's
horrible
kind of
situation.
I really based the ending was tough because it was like there's so much that you have to like put into something like this. Like it's hard to touch on these like sensitive subjects and to tackle them. You want to tackle them correctly because if you don't, you're going to look like, you know, you're going to look like you don't know what you're talking about. And so the ending of the book was really hard because it's one of those, it's not a happy ending, but it is a happy ending. But
I view it a little bit different, and maybe
mhm,
my view is I view it as a just ending,
yeah,
where
okay,
where
yeah,
justice has been achieved, and that's not giving away too much per se, but it's the idea that justice has been achieved, but there's also questions on how far that justice cost, and even
right,
all that, and that's where it gets really interesting, because and that's where this becomes very symbolic, because you're letting in, and I'll use another analogy, you're letting in, you know, man, I can't think of something. It's kind of like you let your enemy in to take out a bigger enemy, but you still let the enemy in. Type of
right.
ending. You eliminated the bigger enemy,
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I see what you mean.
and so it's very very cool in that regard, and it's a very very fascinating thing. And obviously, there's a lot of psychology at play, And it's also the idea of how far are you willing to almost sell your soul and introduce one form of hell to escape a worse hell. And that's how I interpreted a lot of this, is what's going on. And it's super interesting. And I'm being very vague because when people read this, they're going to be like, oh, okay, that went dark real quick.
Oh, yeah, I hope so. But like I also kind of based it off of the whole like idea of like hearing these kids saying like, I wish someone was there for me, and like there are some stories that like I did a lot of other researching, like reading a lot of other stories about similar child abuse cases, and uh as you saw at the end, well,
We're
that
being
was
vague,
actually
everybody, for a
yeah.
reason.
So we're being pretty vague because I don't want to spoil
Once
the
you
book.
take the genie out of the bottle, you can't put it back in.
Yeah, but so like that moment, when the boy is crying out for help and the person says nobody's gonna help you, and I kind of based it off of that part because of like I read some articles about these kids that died due to child abuse, and like something similar like that happened, and they like it was like it came down to the part of it's like, I wish there was someone there that could have helped me at that point, so they didn't suffer any permanent damage or.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. And I do want to back out of the book itself before we ruin it for everybody
Right.
else. Because one of the things is that I think, what is it, 22 or 24 pages?
Yeah, it's a pretty short book. It's a black and white 24-page one shot. It's not very big. It's
And the reason why I bring this up is that you've done 3-issue story arcs, you've done
mhm.
arcs that have been a lot longer, and so one of the things is that it's different when you write short, and
Yeah, it
writing
really
short is
is.
very different entity. I used to write on my own website, and I used to write 600 to 800 words. I don't think people understand what 600 to 800 words looks like, and how short and how every word matters.
Yeah,
In that realm, and maybe I think it was like basically I limited myself to a page, maybe a page and a half. And so, and then I was writing very creative, but you get very interesting. And I think people forget that you need to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it has to make sense. When you have 3 issues of a comic, and feel
it's
free to
easy to do.
disagree or correct me, you have a lot more room and a lot more panels and a lot
Definitely.
more maneuverability where you can waste a page or two and you still could fit everything neatly or relatively neatly into a story. When you have 24 pages, if you waste 2 whole pages, what is that, like 16 panels? I mean, you're
Mhm.
screwed, like completely. And so what was this like for you? Because I don't know if you wrote a one shot before this, but it's the idea that even
So
to go through writing short.
this is my first full one shot. I've done like stuff for shorts, like 4 pagers and 8 pagers. But this is like my first full one shot, and it was really hard to kind of like figure out how to pace it and how to like get stuff in there so like you can understand what's going on and what's happening.
Yeah, and even to talk about that, because obviously when you're doing something for the first time, and to even add fuel to the fire, you're dealing with a very sensitive topic. You're dealing in a genre that's horror, that's extremely competitive at the moment. And you're like, look, I want this thing to actually look good, make sense, and not be laughed out of the industry, for lack of a better word. You
Mm-hmm.
know, all joking aside on that front. So, what was this like saying, hey, okay, even just to do it as a one shot, because this could have been expanded outward into another 2 issues very easily. And maybe, you would have to slow down or add more to the story or raise the stakes a little bit up to get another issue or two out of it. But also to condense it down, it is nice at the same time, because it's kind of like, okay, we have this story and this doesn't need to go on forever.
Right. Yeah. So it is a bit harder, but sometimes like you only have enough story for a book, and that's kind of like how this book was. I only had enough story for 24 pages compared to like it's different like with Sever, like I have a whole 3 issue plot marked out and like as I was writing It Was Nobody, I was like, could I maybe just make it a mini series? And then I realized there's not enough. Like I mean, I could stretch it and I could make more if I had to, but then I feel like a lot of the heart of the book would kind of dissipate and dilute out.
This is very interesting because there's actually two questions I want to ask you out of this. So, what is this like? Because I feel like a lot of writers say, "Oh man, I got a great idea. Holy smokes, I read this. This is awesome." And I know when I do a great interview or when I get a good comic book, what it's going to be worth sometimes. And I know I struck gold. And then sometimes I'm lucky because I could get another one. I'm like, oh man, I struck gold twice. And it's always nice when you're right. Yeah, and you know the
Right.
feeling when you write something, you're like, oh man, that was a great page that I wrote. Like you just
Mhm.
know it, right? And so I feel like a lot of writers say, oh my God, I wrote this amazing thing and it was supposed to be a one shot, but I know there's money here. Or I know it's going to be a successful campaign. And then they basically stretch it out and they don't know what to say. Hey, maybe I should just leave it as a one shot. So, and that's a form of discipline. That's a form of being genuine to the story. And I feel like people say, look, there's fame, fortune, glory, or even just success for whether this project or 15 projects more down the road somewhere because of this book. And what was that like for you? Because that's a very complicated thing. And I've seen it and you've seen things that should have just been like, should have been dead in the water after the first 2 issues or 3 issues. And somebody's like,
Right.
I'm going to do another 4 issues of this. And I'm like, you can, and it's not bad, but it's not as good as the first three.
Yeah, see, like I've given some thought about it. Like if people want more, like you're gonna want to give them more if they're especially if they're like, we want to buy the next book. But luckily for this this series or this or if it becomes something, instead of like making it continuous, I can use a whole new scenario. I could because nobody he's not a he's not dedicated to Cody. He's a monster that comes and helps children that are being abused. So I could write another one shot about another character dealing with some other kind of abuse, and nobody shows up to help them.
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting way to go about it. But I mean, in my view is that sometimes a story, you write a story and then you're like, look, I'm not going to continue to do this. I
Hmm.
don't know if you're familiar with Faulty Towers by any chance with
I
John
don't
Cleese.
think so.
So it was 12 episodes. It wasn't an issue of money with them. John Cleese basically said, look, I made my point over the last 12 episodes and I don't want to continue. I'm happy with where it has gone and what it set out to accomplish. And I think there's something to be said about that, where I think it's always nice when a writer says, look, I can go back. You look at Jerry Seinfeld with Seinfeld. I mean, they stopped at the line and said, look, we're at the top of our game. Why would we continue? And
Right.
I think there's something that it could be said about that, where it's just like, look, we're right where we need to be. And I want people to remember X as it is at its top versus saying sullying your name. And I think it's a very complicated issue in comics right now because, well, there's real money. And this goes to my second question. It's kind of like if you're doing $50,000 on Kickstarter and you're only going to do a one shot on it, it's hard to say no if you come back and you're going to do 60,000 the
Right.
next round. And then if you're going to do another 70 for issue 3 and it started out as a one shot, but then again, you raise credibility. And there's people that I've lost credibility for in certain realms because I'm like, wait a second, like you told a great story and then you wanted to have a second bite at the apple and a third. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of getting it feels like a cash grab at that point. So I'm very curious how you feel about that because obviously I haven't produced a Kickstarter yet, but it's something that is going to be tricky when I write a comic. I produced a Kickstarter, everybody. I produced a Kickstarter. I didn't produce a comic book. I'll correct myself.
Yeah, no, but yeah, like I said, I don't want to write more about the It Was Nobody. I do want it to stay kind of as its own thing. If I had to revisit it, I might, but I would prefer just to keep the one shot of keep it a one shot.
Yeah, but no, because I like it as a one shot. Like I don't know. At this point in my comic career as a reader, I like to read a complete story, and both on an economic level and even on just a time level. I don't want to be 6 issues into a book at this
Right.
point. I mean, especially on Kickstarter. I mean, the average person on Kickstarter, maybe if they're lucky, they could get out a 6 issue miniseries in a year. If they do issues 1 and 2, and then they double up 3 and 4, and then they double up 5 and 6, especially if issues 1, 2, and are really popular, they might be able to do double issues. But I don't want to wait around for most people 18 months for your story to be complete, because and you know this and I know this, I have money at different times in the year, and if your Kickstarter doesn't fall in to a position, I don't have any money in July, guys. Like every July I am broke, but then every September I have money. Apparently, for whatever reason, it's always worked out that way. And so it's one of those things where if your Kickstarter doesn't fall in September, it's very weird for me, but it falls in July, like I'm kind of broke. And so like it gets tricky in that realm too for me. And I just want a complete story at this point. So that's kind of where I'm at. But I'm very curious how you view that and everything that's sort of going on with that, because it's and even just one shots versus like 6 issue miniseries versus even long form, because it is a big cash commitment. It's a time commitment. And I'll be honest, I don't remember what happens in issue 2 of half the books I buy.
Right. It's really hard to dedicate to, like, I personally don't do multi-issue books, like up like that high. 6 seems a bit high, and then you have people that are doing like ongoing books. Like, I don't know how they do it, because I don't
we all know who we're talking about. His 30 issue plus series. We could say his name. He's not gonna mind.
Yeah, well, no, I don't really back a lot of the Kickstarters that have like more than X amount. I think the only one I try to back is Edward Davis's Immortal Era.
That's who we're talking about. I like Ed.
Well,
I like Ed.
Yeah, Ed's great and he's doing great, but I don't have the dedication for that. Like that's a lot of money that I could not make, and so like I try to keep my stuff short, like Sever's 3 issue miniseries. It Was Nobody's a one shot. My next books is My Grandmother is a Demon Slayer, and that's going to be a 4-part miniseries, and the first book's like 40 pages. Then I have Blade of the Undying, which is also going to be a miniseries, and it's also, but they're going to be bigger books. Like the first one's 50 pages. So
yeah, because one of the things, and I'll just speak about Ed's book, after a while it becomes a huge economic commitment. And this is not a unique problem to him per se, because if you're buying Batman for 50 issues every single month, it also becomes a big economic commitment. And even if you're buying previews, it is still expensive. If it's like $2.80 in previews and you're buying 50 issues, it becomes expensive very quickly over the course of 60, 70 months. And it's time, it's affordability, and also it's just management of books. I mean, 50 books is 1/6 of a long box. Sometimes it's not even 1/6. Sometimes it's 1/5 of a long box, depending on how big your long box is.
Right.
And so it's also just space for me. And it's the idea that I can read a one shot or a 3 issue miniseries in a matter of an hour at this point. With a 50 issue comic series, I gotta takes me like 2 weeks to get through it. And it's just like, I want a complete story and I want the whole thing brought to me pretty quickly.
I've noticed that like that's been kind of a popular thing, is that people are more interested in, like full, like actual full books, or one shots or graphic novels, specifically because you can sit down and read all of it instead of like just waiting for the next issue to come out.
So let me ask you a question, and it's: are you an anime fan by any chance?
Yeah, yes.
So I'm gonna ask you
yes,
a very.
yes.
I don't know. I ask these questions openly curiosity. So how do you watch anime, and not like your platforms, but like how do you sit and watch a series?
So it depends on the series and depends on how long it is. I
So,
do
so,
watch
so
a lot of like I'm not gonna get into One Piece. I'm not gonna get into Naruto. I'm not gonna get into Bleach.
yeah. I'll ask it this way. So what I do is I'm a binge anime watcher. So I take one day off a week where I'm not working on this project, I'm not working on my other project, and I will grab a beer or two, and I will watch like 6 to 7 hours of anime all at once. And then maybe I'll play some video games, but like I tear through series that way. Where I will wait for most series during the spring lineup to finish up so I can watch all of it in a row. Because
See,
I like
that's
to
what
watch.
I would do too. Is like I would, unless like the anime's already been out for a while. Like I said, there's no way I'm gonna dive into One Piece. Like that's so much dedication that I don't have. But if there's
I mean,
like,
yeah.
but if there's an anime and it has like 5 seasons, and it's working on the sixth, I'll still start it and I'll probably binge it until like the sixth season is completely out, and then I'll watch it. I did that with what was it? The time I was reincarnated as a slime. Like they were in the process of making season 4, and I was like, I'm just gonna wait for it to be done, then I'll binge it. And that's what I did.
Because the reason why I bring this up is that I read a lot of stuff on Comixology, but I have waited for a bunch of stuff to have like 50 issues out on Comixology so I could sit down and get a
binge 'em.
good chunk of
Yeah.
it. Because at this stage in the game for me, like I want to have a bigger piece of the story, and that's something that I'm very curious about you, and even where comics are shifting to at this point, because what do people want? And look, I'm a comic collector. I buy and sell comics. I enjoy having a collection, but I don't view me as a collector and me as a reader as the same. Where me as a reader wants the entire thing at my disposal, so I want 6 issues all at once, whether they're floppies or whether it's a graphic novel or whether it's a hybrid or whether it's digital. I don't care how you give it to me, but I want all 6 issues. And I will go to the
Right.
store, comic shop, and I'll buy 6 issues of Sonic the Hedgehogs, 1 through 6, all in floppies if you got it. I don't care if it's a graphic novel. I just want more story all at once.
So I feel bigger books are probably the way to go. That's why like a lot of my books now, other than like my shorter one shots, my like Sever, it's a 3 issue miniseries, but the first book is still 40 pages. It's pretty much like the length of 2 issues.
So to even talk about that, because I've noticed a trend where people have gone from producing a 22 pager to doing 28 to 32 pages per book. And and I view it as a response to what people are frustrated with Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, and I guess mainstream comics, for lack of a better word. I also view it as a way to compete, where you're providing now more content, and people want more content, and it doesn't cost more money, and it doesn't break the bank for you to go from 26 pages to 32 pages as far as massive printing costs. The art is what's expensive in that entire scenario, but I also view it as a way to compete and things like that. And so why do you think that trend has happened? And also places like Zenoscope have gone and done these one-shots for $9 that are 72 pages. And so why do you think that trend has sort of shifted? Because that's a relatively new trend in comics.
Well, yeah, like if you look at it, a lot of the comic book stuff, like it's like people are getting more into these longer books because there's more to read. They don't have to worry about like the whole universe resetting and them retelling the same stories again, you know. But I think a lot of people are more into like a lot of the one shots because they don't have to, if they end up not liking it, they don't have to dedicate to the series after that, you know. It's just, I read it, I'm done. And like you, and not even, it's not even just like these books, like webtoons are becoming way more popular too. Like Lore Olympus, I think just hit like one of the biggest records on there ever or something like that. And
so to even talk about webtoons, because I'm not a big webtoon guy. It's something I never got into. I'm a big manga guy. I'm a big, American comics guy. I'm obviously comicsology. I've had comicsology for about a year, and there's so much to read there, in comicsology. But I'm not against webtoons. It's just, you got to pick and choose what you want to read, and sometimes you fall into one track. And I think I've read like one or two webtoon comics, but like what happens to me is that I'll read it and then I'll catch up and then I won't look at it and then I forget where I'm at. Like that's my whole problem with webtoons is like, and I'm like, did I read chapter? Did I stop at 100? Or did I stop at like 500? So that's something that's a big issue for me as a consumer. But do you think that webtoons have gained, I guess, credibility and also attention and popularity because they're now more accessible than anything else, and they're also probably one of the cheapest things that you could read in comics?
oh, definitely, for sure. Like you don't even have to pay for webtoons. You can just people just post their content on there for free, and you can read it. And then like they pay the artists for like the subscribers that they have, and you can also tip your favorite creators so that they can continue to keep making stuff.
Oh well, if only us podcasters had something so wonderful like that, that'd be great. That would be fantastic because everybody could tip me, and I greatly appreciate all the tipping here. But I digress. But because that's the thing about webtoons is that like, and that's what I don't get is that how are people even producing it? And because some of this stuff is amazing, unless what it is that the people who are doing it is that it's really an artist's game versus a writer's game.
I couldn't tell you. I know that a lot of the artists on webtoons are also the writers, but I also know that there are some writers who hire artists to do everything for them, but I don't know which ones are which, or
because my understanding is that if you're an artist, and I don't know, do you know Tyler Carpenter?
Yeah.
So Tyler has a real advantage with a bunch of his properties because he's an artist and he's also a writer. And so he could utilize Patreon very well. And he could use other things like that extremely well, and even, web comics and webtoons extremely well because he doesn't have to worry about paying for an artist. So he can charge less for a lot of his books, and he can go a Patreon route because he doesn't have to worry about paying an artist, like, because you're more of a writer. And so you have to worry when you want to do something that you want to basically have to pay your artist. And that definitely affects creation. And at least I think it does. Maybe I'm completely wrong. But that is something that is fascinating. And that's something like I don't get it completely. And I'm very honest. And I mean, I get parts of it, but I'm like, how are these people making it work? Because if you're not the artist and you're outlaying that capital, I mean, it gets complicated in a lot of ways because especially if nobody's paying for it. Like,
yeah, no, it's a lot of hopes and dreams.
It's not like the comic industry. It's hopes and dreams. It's similar to the podcast industry. We can't all be Joe Rogan, guys. We can't all be Joe Rogan. That's why I appreciate a like and a share of this video. It's much appreciated. It's the public service announcement. We can't all be Joe Rogan, guys. So like and share out this video. It means a lot.
Well, yeah, no, anyway, but like a lot of it is like a lot of these other creators that are able to do it are just really good at marketing. Like, like Travis Gibb, he just smashed his latest Kickstarter for Cthulhu Invades Wonderland, and I forgot what the final tally was at the end, but
yeah. No, I back that Kickstarter. It's going to be a good one. This is actually a good question for you as well. Where do you think the actual project goes, and it's the merit of the project, or it's the covers, or it's the marketing, or it's even just somebody's name attached to a project? I'll give an example. There was somebody who had a Carla Cohen cover in their Kickstarter, and naturally that got the attention of people who are Zenescope fans because they really liked her. So they didn't care so much about the book, but they cared about the cover. And so this is where this gets really interesting, because I'm an investor and I'm a comic book investing type of guy. And I'm looking and saying, look, what makes a Kickstarter successful? And I think there's 3 or 4 things. And I think every campaign, in my opinion, is different. But I look at certain campaigns that are doing well, and it's like, well, you have certain cover artists involved in your projects. So I'm curious how you feel about that, because I think it does go back to marketing as well.
Yeah, no, I believe it all comes down to marketing, because like if you hire a cover artist that's really popular, you know that you're going to have people that are, dedicated to that artist, and they're going to want to buy that artist's art.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating in a lot of ways, and I'm very, very perplexed in this entire thing. And obviously, I'm going to be producing a comic, and I'm making a decision. I'm very open about it, where I'm going to have certain cover artists in that project. And the reason why is that I have an eBay store where I've built out my name over the last 10 years, where I buy and sell comics. So naturally, I know what my audience buys from me on eBay. And there's going to be covers built specifically for that audience. And I'm not selling to them from my eBay store through my Kickstarter, but always, and then if you plan accordingly, there should be left over. And well, that's another distribution channel for me. And it's an easier way for me to get rid of, I guess, the books that are in my backlog that did not sell on the Kickstarter that I don't bring to cons. Because I understand that in the entire comic world, there is the idea that you don't necessarily make money from your Kickstarter per se, but you make money with the extra books you print. You make money at the books you sell at cons off your Kickstarter, or maybe a little bit more money than you did on the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter is supposed to be there to fund your book.
Mm-hmm. Well, so that's for some people. Like I do print runs, so I don't kickstart for the full amount of the books, but I know that there are a lot of people that do that, which is, I respect that. That's a lot more work but I like doing print runs because, print runs have a higher success rate on Kickstarter, because like people like seeing that, the book's done and they know they're going to get it. And you're right. Like you do make a lot of money at cons, especially from like alternate covers and everything. Like the last con I did, I had a guy who bought Sever, and he came back, bought one of the alternate covers.
Alternative variants,
yeah. So I was like, he's like, oh, what are these? I was like, oh, they're just the Kickstarter variants. Once they're gone, they're gone. So he bought the other one, and then he looped back around and was like, you know what? I should probably get the other 2 before they're all gone. And I was like, okay.
Because it's fascinating. I mean, I buy Paul Green books from Zenescope, and there's a book that I'm going to be paying for tomorrow when they send me my invoice, and it's a $25 book that they sold to me. It's on eBay for $50 to $60 right now.
Dang.
And it hasn't even been in anybody's hands, which is ludicrous. And so it's a 250 print run, and it's a very expensive book. And because people
You
want
made
it,
out like a bandit.
oh, I'm running. I bought 2 for a reason. And I might not sell the other one because it's a beautiful book. And then there are other books that are like legitimately a year ago were $25 straight from Zenescope. They're going for $200 right now on eBay, which is crazy because it's Sun Kumanaki. And so it's very interesting to me. And obviously I love it because I'm making money with this stuff. But that's the idea where I am definitely with a comic that I'm writing. The play for me is in the covers. It's not the story. The story is going to be okay, but it's the covers that are going to sell the book. And it's the idea that I'm basically doing 4 SKUs of 200 books. So there's 200 copies of each book, and that's all I'm printing is 800 books. And I think I'm going to sell out of all 800 within about 6 months. Ideally at $30 a pop, which, if my math is correct, that's $24,000, which is ludicrous. And I'm not going to go print an 801st book ever. So I'm going big or go home, right?
Oh yeah, I guess so.
But I have other distribution methods and a whole other business that's not Kickstarter related, but it goes back to data points, and it's super interesting. But this is a whole different discussion and path we're going down. And before we get to your awards, I do want to talk about a very interesting topic because we are on the idea of horror comics. And so I am curious on your thoughts on why horror is huge and extremely popular right now, because you did write a horror book that is a little scary in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So what I've known, people like the thrill of being frightened, and a lot of the a lot of the popular horror movies today, I don't know if you noticed, are like they're not about monsters or serial killers or like slasher kind of characters or demons. They're about actual people who are crazy. Like there's that movie Karen that just came out, and it's about the neighbor who's harassing this family because of they're not following the neighborhood code or something, and she like it just looks crazy. And I think that it was nobody honestly kind of follows that kind of that idea too. It's like it's not the monsters you should be afraid of, it's the people you should be afraid of.
So I'm curious because, and you know this, and I'm not a big horror fan. I actually like to sleep at night peacefully. No. I have like terrible nightmares, and like, you ever wake up in the middle of the night? And
I used to be like that when I was a kid.
I had a crazy dream where I woke up in the middle of the night and I felt like somebody was watching me, and I was like, okay, this is messed up, and it was like pitch black dark, and I was like, oh my god, like this is like, it was like the idea of like just pure darkness, and then you can't see somebody whispers in your ear, and like I jumped up 15 feet out of like, that was like a dream.
No.
Like an hour. Like I was like, and like I turned the lights on and I was like curled up in a ball. Very, very, very weird. I think it was like 2 nights ago. So I'm like, oh snap. Like literally, I am not fit for reading a horror book, guys. I am not good at it in a horror movie either. But things that were terrifying 20 years ago are not terrifying today, is the point I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm.
And also the idea is that everything in horror has been done. Like a stalking film has been done. The Purge has been done. The idea of somebody showing up in a mask of like a president knocking on your door, breaking down your door, trying to kill you has been done. Scream's been done. And so what is this like for you to break new ground? And even to go down the idea of saying, hey, people are crazy, and then they go off the rails. And even just the idea of pushing the line, because that's a very tricky thing in horror right now, I feel, where people aren't willing to push the line, and even where to say, hey, what's the next evolution? How to scare somebody.
Well, it's just, yeah, like, the Nobody, it touches on a lot of sensitive subjects that people don't want to ever touch, usually. And I feel to really scare people, you gotta like really dig down into like the like things that can happen, like things that could happen every day. Like this is, like this book touches on child abuse, and it's like all about this poor kid who's dealing with, his like the worst stuff, and he's and people don't want to help him because they don't believe him, or like he's tried to get help and he just can't, and the idea of knowing that you're going into this place without any help is terrifying, because you don't know what's going to happen. Like, as you saw the end of the book, you saw what almost happened to Cody. He what happened.
Yeah, it's a very, very scary thing, and I'm not too sure if Cody's okay at the end of the book either, and that's a good position to give an idea that I think there's ambiguity or whatever that word is. I can't speak today. I think there are questions about where Cody is, and even if he is okay.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the book, and there's a lot of questions, and I think you can make an argument either way. I really think you can make an argument either way on how that book ends, and I think that was intentional in a lot of ways. So fascinating position on that. But before we get to rewards, I do want to mention my sponsor. So we're going to be back in 32 seconds, everybody. Cowabunga Comics is sponsoring this episode. They got an amazing comic shop. They got a Department of Truth, thing that's going on. And I'm going to show you some of what they do out there. So we'll be back in like 32 seconds, everybody. Stick with us, and then we're going to dive into reward. And we're back, and obviously Cowabunga Comics, they are in Florida. Their link is up in the description up above. They're helping to make this show possible, so definitely go support them. They got a lot of cool stuff. Kyle Willis, you might see his name a lot in Facebook groups. He is either the owner or the co-owner of that store, and they can ship anywhere in the world. They got a lot of cool projects, books out there, and they got 2 variants that Kyle did. Super cool stuff. One of them is Department of Truth, and then one of them is for Image. For an Image book as well. So check that stuff out. And he does a lot of cool remarks and stuff. So obviously, though, I do want to get into rewards here because you got really cool stuff with this book. You have the digital book. You have Poems of Nobody by Steve Rishu.
Yeah.
And then you have a package where you get both the digital comic and the poem book. Obviously, digital and physical copies. Physical with stickers, physical with mini prints, physical book and stickers. And I think anytime you get a physical book, the digital usually is included with that, right?
Yeah.
And then all of your books are out there as well, because you have a lot of other stuff that people could pick up that I don't know if you can get everything physical, but I know you can get everything digital.
Everything digital, yes. Right now, only Sever is available physical, and that's because, like, when I went to my last con, I finally sold the backlog of all of my old stock from, 7 years ago, and so now I just have Severs.
It must have been very nice to sell the backlog.
Yes, it was.
And we all know who was really happy in that discussion. So, but that's not the point. But obviously, if you want just to read everything that Braiden has done, you can get that digitally delivered right to your inbox, and you'll be off to the races. And I'm sure at some point Braiden will be reprinting some of the stuff that he has out of stock in some fashion or another. And then obviously you got some pins with a physical copy of the book as well, because people have their pins on pretty much everything.
I just got the proofs for them today too, so they've been approved and they'll be here soon.
And then there's everything in the campaign as well. and that's some stretch goals and some other stuff. And then you also have a retail package, which is super cool as well. And one of the things that I like about your Kickstarter is that everything is relatively affordable on your Kickstarter. And this is something that I think is very cool, where anybody really can pick up something off of your Kickstarter and not break the bank. And you've seen, and I don't know what your line is, but once I start hitting $25 to $30 on a Kickstarter, I get priced out very quickly.
Right.
And so I don't know where you draw the line, everybody's different, but when I can pick up a cover A for $10 and get all the stretch goals associated with it, I think it's a great deal because, look, I'm willing to take a risk on somebody, but you also, I feel like I have to meet me halfway as a consumer.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I try not to make things I try to make things affordable for everyone because it's hard dedicating money into a Kickstarter, you know, and you see some of these Kickstarters, like there's people selling like 24-page books for $15, and then you have to pay shipping, and it's like, what? Because that's the biggest problem right now is shipping. Like shipping's the biggest dent on it. Like I hated it because like I think I had to bump up my shipping prices a little bit just because of how because I underguessed for Sever, you know. So a lot of that shipping money came out of my pocket.
Let's talk about shipping. So I run an eBay business. My shipping is expensive. I charge $11 a book. And the craziest thing though is that I ship in a Gemini. I ship United States Postal Service. There's a few reasons why. It comes with tracking. It comes with $50 of insurance. Most of the books I sell are $45 to $65 books. So I want my $50 of insurance. I want my tracking, and well, that's how I ship. And you could call me expensive. You could be like, oh, it's $11, and people get really upset with me sometimes on eBay because I'm selling an $8 book, and the shipping is more than the book. And I'm like, it's $10.45 for me to ship you this book. Would you like me to give you 65 cents back if I'm under by 65 cents, or I'm under by 55 cents? But I'm like, you have to realize that a Gemini costs money. You have to realize that I lose money on shipping. Bubble wrap is expensive, but that's just the nature of the beast. And I actually had to raise up my prices, where I used to charge $9 back in the day when it was the good days in eBay, guys. $9 shipping. I know everybody's like, holy shit, there's $9 shipping. Can we please get that back?
I remember when it was like $1 or something. Like this was when I did my first Kickstarter. Like it was $1 maximum to ship 3 books. Like in 2015, you know, like like it was like $2 at the most, and now it's just like $5. It's like, oh my gosh.
No, because I'm expensive, and this is something that's very interesting. And I mean, as I stated, if I'm shipping a $30 book, you're damn right it's going to be like $10 shipping.
Yeah,
and you can look, that's ridiculous. But guess what? You know what doesn't happen with my books? They don't come damaged. So you get what you pay for. And it's the idea that you're going to spend $30 or $40 on a book, especially if it's a limited 200. I'm not playing around in that realm, and I'm expensive with shipping. And so that's something that I have an issue with, where I look at people's projects and I'm like, yeah, I can't afford like $9 shipping on a Kickstarter for like a $15 book. Like I get priced out really, really quickly. So how do you deal with that as a Kickstarter?
Well, so I always ship my books with bags and boards, because not only does that offer like a whole nother like layer of security, you can put it in the bubble wrap envelopes, and they will stay safe until they get to their destination. And I haven't had any complaints yet. Like I've heard that all my books have shown up undamaged and perfectly fine from my last Kickstarter, but like the Kickstarter before, which was like 5 years ago when I was still learning everything, they told me that like I had a few people that were like, "Hey, my books got messed up. Could you like my books and my posters got messed up? Could you send me new stuff?" And I was like, "I will do that. And this time I'll make sure that it's that I did everything right because I thought that I did everything right, but I guess I didn't."
Yeah, it's tricky, and I mean, I probably have a postal issue maybe once every 3 years, and so obviously I've learned now I insure everything because is when you insure things naturally, if you send out a lot of packages like I do, you know, bad things happen, and it's unfortunate in that regard. So, but yeah, no, it's tricky, and obviously, probably, going forward. I mean, I think in the next 6 months, I'm going to be raising up my shipping rates. The second I find out that the book, because I don't mind taking a 50-cent hit on shipping, I can't take like a $4 hit on shipping.
Right.
And the second that the shipping raises in the post office, guess what? I am, going to be raising my rates accordingly. And it's unfortunate, but, I can't afford to lose money on shipping. But I will say this, that I overcharge for my metal cards on shipping. I should have actually only put the shipping at $1. And if I put it at $1, I still would have made 30 cents on the shipping, which is crazy. I charged $5 shipping, and I was like, "Oh snap! It's not that expensive to ship metal cards." Like I didn't realize. Like I thought they were more expensive to ship because I didn't know how light they were. It was terrible on my part. But moving forward, I think I'm going to charge like $2 shipping. And if you can't afford $2 shipping, you got a bigger issue. But I digress. But I was very curious about that because it is tricky because it is a business and it's brutal. And people give me free shipping on Kickstarter books. God bless you. God bless you. That's all I'm gonna say. Because I could tell you that I am not happy when I have to pay for shipping on Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'm gonna have a cover dedicated to we want free shipping on our Kickstarter books. It's gonna be a cover with that on it. Just the stamp on it to be great.
Yeah, but it's hard to do free shipping too. It's shipping used to not be as much as it is now, and it wouldn't have been a problem then. But like you said, you have to run a business too. Like you have to make sure you're not losing so much money, especially now with shipping.
It's very tricky because this is how I view it, and obviously I ran my Kickstarter for my podcast, which is a whole different discussion, whole different story. Everybody, that thing was brutal. Man, people were not happy with me, and people are still not happy with me on that. But I understood that it was a business. This is a business. This is a podcast that's a business, and it's the idea that it's a fun business, but it's nonetheless a business. There are expenses with it, and so that's why people get really pissed off. When I was asking for money, I'm like, wait a second, it's a business, and so your Kickstarter, I think that's a misconception about Kickstarter, both from the consumer position and even other people's Kickstarters, is that somebody sees, and we'll use Travis. I think Travis did shy of 50,000, if not a little over 50, but he didn't make 50K. He might have not even made anything on that book. That's a fair assumption, where to print a lot of books, to pay your artists, to pay your writers, to pay for all the little tchotchkes, to pay for different components, or maybe Travis made, and I don't have Travis's financials, but I don't think it would shock you if Travis made no money on that book, right?
I wouldn't know.
No. But you get the point I'm asking. Where I think people don't understand that this is a business, and just like any other business, it can lose money, it can make money, it can make a lot of money, it can lose a lot of money. And so what is that like for you? Because whether you want to be a business or not, you have to be a business on Kickstarter, unless you just say, hey, look, I'm doing this as a pre-order form and I don't need the money and I'm already rich enough. And I'm sure there's people on Kickstarter who are worth millions of dollars who say, look, I just want to give the ability to buy this book the most direct way possible without opening up a website.
Unfortunately, I'm not one of those. But
I'm not one of those
yeah,
either.
yeah. I
Believe me.
understand. Like, I understand why people do it. Like, definitely, like, who was it? Brian Sanderson. He did that for his newest books. And he slaughtered on his Kickstarter. Like, I think he's one of the biggest Kickstarters on there now. Like, he made like 41.3 million.
I think like 47 last time I checked. Let's talk about this because I'm curious about your opinions. This is where we get very controversial. So this is my whole thing about him. You're like, oh, this is going to be a game changer. And I'm like, let's all take a break. And feel free to disagree. Because is it duplicable? Can it be done with another person? Because the only time something is a game changer is when somebody can take his template and they do $25 million on 4 different books that are not his books, have nothing to do with his books, and maybe are in a similar genre. But unless it is a copyable, template, then it's really not a game changer. It's a one-off. And that is the issue that I have right now, because it is too early to tell if this is the new model or if this is a fluke, let alone is he going to deliver on time, let alone is the books that he produced, are they going to be great? Is it a fear of missing out? And there's all these questions, and nothing against the guy, because social media wise, that thing was amazing to watch.
Oh yeah,
but
dude, it was
my real question is all what I just asked, because that is what I am curious about. Because if all of a sudden somebody copies what he did, or took and studied what he did, and then basically took what he was doing and then copied it and built out the template he used, and took all the steps he has taken in the last 3 years to do that, then that might be the game changer. But it's also the idea, what people don't understand is that he has a whole back-end distribution warehouse, essentially, where he is a small-time publisher, and this was just not a direct-to-order form, but this is almost a seed round for his business. And that's the other thing, too, is that there's a lot more stuff that's on the back end of this that nobody's talking about. And then when I try to bring it up in a bunch of shows, people dismissed me because they're not understanding. So I'm curious what you think about that, because I'm curious to see what the next, 18 months of this looks like with what he did.
Well, so like I've noticed that like there's a lot of bigger people that are kind of following that kind of thing and doing they're coming to Kickstarter to get their like pre-orders. I don't know if you're familiar with any wargamers or like wargaming games other than
I'm sorry, I'm an amateur vendor fan.
Oh,
that's a good example, right?
Yeah. But there's a smaller company, Privateer Press. They just did the same thing for one of their games, Monster Apocalypse, and they
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, and they well, let me.
I don't know what's going on. You're pulling it
Yeah,
up.
sorry, I'm pulling up the Kickstarter because I pledged to it because they used it as a pre-order thing because they I know one of the guys that's actually there, and he's in my local like wargaming group, but he was talking about Kickstarter is such a helpful tool, especially for these bigger people, because they get the pre-order forms and then they know how much of everything they need. So I feel that like even though Brian Sanderson's maybe kind of like a one-of kind of thing, I think that we're going to see virtually bigger people and companies coming to Kickstarter to start using Kickstarter as like a pre-order build-up kind of thing.
I mean, I could tell you, my entire podcast, it was twofold. A, I needed the money, and I need more money, to be very honest. But it also was tremendously helpful in finding guests. And it also, because you know very well that I get solicited. And it actually has stopped a lot of solicitations. Because unfortunately, people bother me, or used to bother me all throughout my season 2, can I come in your show, man? And I'm like, okay, what's your project? And I used to throw out a Google Doc, and I used to get like 90 people. And I'm like, okay, what's your book? What are we doing here? Like, because there's a lot of projects that are not necessarily bad, but they're not at the quality of what I'm trying to achieve. And out of those 90, maybe there's like 5 that are really fantastic projects.
Right.
Now I'm being a lot more selective in what money does. Money actually is an amazing factor because it actually filters out bad actors. And also, when people throw money down on something, they treat it differently. It also changes relationships with people. And that's another thing, because when you back my Kickstarter, you are now essentially paying for a service, and we have a business relationship. When somebody buys your book, they don't have a business relationship with you. They have a consumer with the store relationship. And that's something that people need to understand about my Kickstarter. When you back out podcasters Kickstarter, you're changing your business relationship. So there are certain people who have paid me that we cannot go back to a different relationship. We could be friendly, they could be my friend technically, but the business relationship is always going to be there. It's super fascinating. But I think that it is going to be a very interesting world, because now we do have bigger companies coming in, and we have a very weird situation going on. And people say, oh, a rising tide raises all ships. And I believe that statement is true, but it's also the idea that if I'm a small gaming company and then Avatar: The Last Airbender comes out and my game is $50 and their game is 120, and they have a bigger name, the winners eat the losers. So what are we really talking about? Because people say, oh, they'll back both projects, or they're not your audience, but they're both games and they're both good games. Somebody has to make a choice at a certain point, and I have to make this choice every single month. I have about $30 to spend on Kickstarter. I have to go through 50 Kickstarters and run it through almost a filter and have a series of questions to figure out what book I'm going to buy. Because I can't go wrong with at least 20 of the books out of the 50. I cannot lose on a monetary level, on an enjoyment level, on a stretch goal level. And so then I have to figure out, so there's going to be one winner and 49 losers for my money. And people can disagree with me, but nobody has been able to refute that position that I just threw out. So I'm very curious how you feel about that, because it's complicated for me. I wish I had an infinite amount of money. I wish I had like millions of dollars. Like, because then I'd be backing legitimately like 30 Kickstarters, and you play, who wants money? And like, that'd be the game show. Who wants money?
Well, I understand your whole point of like people are always going to want the bigger thing, but that's also, it's hard to like determine, because people will always want a bigger thing, but you'll always have people that are like I forgot when it was, but do you remember when the Keanu Reeves Kickstarter went off with the Boom Studio Comics?
I'm sorry, I was too busy watching Bill and Ted.
That's fine. But
no, continue, please. I remember the Kickstarter well.
Yeah, but a lot of people that were running Kickstarters around the same time, like their books appeared at the bottom of the page for theirs, and apparently a lot of people got a lot of pledges because, like, I'm assuming people saw, like, the mass amount of people that saw Keanu Reeves' book scrolled down and was like, oh, these also look interesting. So you may, like, a lot of people are going to go for the bigger name. That's how it's gonna play until you become a bigger name. But you're also going to have people that are going to be like, oh, I see these other projects now, and maybe I should check them out because it says it's similar to this.
True. I don't disagree. I guess where I throw, and I'm pushing the line here, and my challenge is when you get to spending $100, there gets a point where you get priced out and people are out of money. And like with like a board game in particular, it's also the idea that if I have my lowest price on my Kickstarter is $5, somebody might back something for $5 and say, fuck it, right? Because it's
Mhm.
$5. But if all of a sudden you're trying to sell a $50 physical reward book on, I can't think of, so I don't want to push somebody's name down per se, but let's say I'm selling a $30 comic and there's a big name on there and they're selling a $30 book, and it's a comic, there might be competition at that point where somebody
Mhm.
might be like, look, I just dropped $30. This is a new project. I don't want to take the risk. And there's no cheaper reward. Because like the book I want to do, legitimately, there's 4 rewards. That's it. It's maybe a 5th one. It'll be you'll save $20 if you buy all 4. But beyond that, there's no digital reward for what I'm doing for a reason. I don't want a digital reward. That makes no sense. It's like an NFT mint. There's a lot of logic that went into it. And I'll tell you what the project is off air. I don't want anybody stealing it. It's brilliant, but I get that side where I do think there is some of that, but I also think that what I'm curious about with those people is what rewards are being bought. Because if it's all digital, then it's all $5 rewards, but they got a lot of $5 rewards. That's one thing. But were they converting from a Keanu Reeves person who spent $750, and then that same person spent like $200 at those Kickstarters down below? Or was it the idea that someone said, oh, $5 digital comic, no problem? And that's where this gets really interesting. And enough
Right.
$5 rewards goes a long way, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, that it's fascinating, and that data would be unbelievably worth whatever somebody pays for it.
Right. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, but hold on. I just want to see something real quick. I just want to compare my backers, like how many digital books got back compared to okay.
Because I mean I go the idea that backer count matters, but also average pledge matters too per backer. Where
Right.
if
Yeah. No, I get that. See, I know it's nice to have the digital stuff because you don't have to charge shipping for it. People are more obligated to buy digital things because it's like, oh, I can pay this for the book and I don't have to pay X amount for shipping too. And like a lot of the digital rewards I see, a lot of the stretch goals go into the digital rewards too. So because if you look at my last couple of Kickstarters, like all digital backers, when we got like our backer rewards, they would get extra PDF books from stuff. It was nobody. We just hit 50, so we unlocked. I haven't put my new chart up yet, but we've unlocked 2 additional digital books for every tier, which is a 9-page. One of them's a 9-page little short comic, and the other is a 17-page book of child possession services by John
I hate
Westhoff.
that guy. That guy's horrible. That guy should just stop. He should just stop. He should never come on my comic book hangouts again. How dare he even? You mention his name, and you should be ashamed.
Oh man, yeah, he's awful. Letting me use his book and running
I mean,
Kickstarters.
the worst offense is depowered. I mean, that book is just horrific. You should be ashamed. Just ashamed.
But but thinking about it, it's nice to have physical backers, but I feel like digital just makes everything so much more, achievable.
Look at my Kickstarter. My Kickstarter is almost exclusively digital. It's fantastic.
Right?
I don't think people understand. I was making the joke about people with shipping, and I'm like, man, it's so nice where it's great to have because my product is digital. I'm working on a class right now. The entire class is digital. And what's great about it is the distribution it's fantastic because guess what? It's either on a platform like Udemy, or it's on a platform like OnlyFans or Patreon, or I'm looking at Substack on what I want to teach. And it's the idea that like it is dirt cheap. And because it's all digital, I don't have to charge an arm and a leg. If I'm to send you that class on a like thumb drive or a hard drive, I have to charge you so much money for it because I have expenses. So like if I was to actually send you my class on a USB hard drive, I have to format the hard drive. The hard drive is going to cost me like $40. And so for me to make any money, I mean, I got to charge like $600, but digitally I could charge you 40. It's so much easier, and costs just get cut in half.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 30-hour class what I'm building, so $40 for 30 hours of my time.
Woo.
You know, you can afford it.
I don't know. Maybe no. Just kidding.
I mean, it's like 90 cents an hour. That's what it looks like up actual content, and it's probably more like 120 hours worth of my actual time to build it. So, but I digress. This is not about me. It's about your project, clearly, which means it's really all about me. It's all about me, guys.
All about him.
It is my show. You should be thankful that I allow you the privilege of being on my show. I expect a thank you, and I expect you when the time it comes when we are going to lead the fight and invade Mars, that you will be at my side.
Okay.
I didn't say we're going to make it back to Earth. Because I mean, I didn't say we're going to die either, because the trip just is like 16 months. And, you know, if you're going 16 months this way and you want to go 16 months back the other way, you know, you have to be really dedicated.
Definitely not a round trip.
Not yet. But I digress right there. I don't want to keep you here all night. I've already gotten you and me in trouble enough. I've also gotten John in trouble enough. And he's not even in this show, which is just terrible. But I do want to give you a chance to self-promote yourself. So where can people find you? Where can people back the Kickstarter? Where could people go buy your other books and anything they want? Obviously, social media, all that fun stuff, and anything else you got going on.
All right, so social media, as you guys can see my name by Braiden Cox, the Braidoxian Studios parts. That's where you find me on Facebook. Instagram, it's just Braidoxian. I'm in the process of still setting up my shop, but it'll probably be on Etsy. So you can get physical books from Etsy, and then I'm still trying to figure out how to do my digital stuff, because Comixology is in the process of changing over to Kindle, so you can't submit new comics into Comixology until they figure out their whole thing. So I'll probably look into Drive-Thru Comics and some of the other digital platforms. And my book, It Was Nobody, you know, a heartfelt horror, is on Kickstarter right now. Just type in It Was Nobody. Should be the first thing that pops up. We are at $1,010 out of $1,200. So with 25 days left, we're really close. That 100, we just need 190 more and we're funded, and then I'll announce all the monetary stretch goals and everything. And like I said, all this stuff is done. You know, the book's fully done. If you pledge, you will get your book. I just got proofs for the pins today. I approved them, and they'll be shipped out here soon, within the next couple of weeks. And the pins are actually really cool.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff, and I'm going to keep saying it, and it's true. I said it all of 2020. I said it all of 2021, and I'm going to keep saying it all of 2022. And the idea is that you have to support indie comics, indie creators, indie content creators. No matter what their projects are, you have to support them. And the best way how to do that is actually backing a Kickstarter when they're running, because that is how books get made. That is how projects get made, whether that's Indiegogo, whether that's Kickstarter, whether it's another form of crowdfunding. That's how things get made, because Braiden is not DC, Marvel, Image, or is a big movie studio or anything like that, or a big book publishing company. I am not either. And so all the money that goes into my projects, and I'm going to speak for Braiden, and feel free to correct me at any point on this, goes right back into the project that you're doing. And so, you're supporting that. And let's say that you are not a fan of this book. One of the things you can do is you could go look at his Etsy shop when it's up, follow him on social media. And if there's another book that you do like, you could go pick up that book. And all of a sudden, while you're not supporting the Kickstarter directly, you are supporting Braiden, which indirectly supports his comic book making abilities, as well as every other book he pushes out there. And look, let's say that you're in a tight spot. We've all been there. One of the best things to do is follow people on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, if they got it, Snapchat, anywhere else, YouTube. YouTube is a big one. Check out their website, email lists, all that stuff. It goes a long way, and a lot of that stuff is free. And even sharing out a Twitter, a Facebook page, a Facebook post, anything like that goes a long way as well. As far as I'm concerned, obviously, I appreciate likes and shares. I am Pop Anime Comics on Facebook, as well as I am Pop Anime Comics on Instagram, YouTube. I have conversations in Pop Culture Shorts. I have a comic book fact TikTok, so you can check me out on TikTok there on Comic Book Knowledge, or on YouTube, as well as I do have a t-shirt that you can buy on Redbubble. 16 colors, guys. You can get that shirt in 16 different colors, completely customizable. All the money from that shirt goes right back into this show. Also, buy my metal card, and anything off of my eBay store helps to support me, makes this stuff happen. As well as if you would like to advertise on this show, you can advertise very much as well. Cowabunga Comics is advertising right now, and you can advertise too, whether you want an ad or live copy or anything like that. Or if you're a printing company and you want to advertise to me, you do that too. Or if you just want to throw me $5 because you want to say, hey, Andrew, you really need a 6-pack, I have Buy Me a Coffee, and I greatly appreciate it because writing interviews can drive you mad, and well, Twisted Teas are really good. And so I would absolutely really appreciate if anyone wants to do that, but you don't have to, because I get it. I'd rather you actually support somebody's Kickstarter. And if you have some money left over, you're more than welcome to throw me, Buy Me a Coffee, because I greatly appreciate it. But more importantly, I actually want to hear what you guys think. Comment section, like it, share the interview out, because that stuff goes a long way and it means a lot to me. And so that's the first and foremost thing that you can do, and it's free. So please go share this out, everybody. It means a lot to me, as well as for the people who are listening to this in podcast format. Leave me a review on Apple for when this thing gets to Apple, because that also is extremely helpful. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Alrighty. Well, thanks for watching. That's the final word I get, right?
Well, I got nothing else, guys. So
Okay.
everybody, that's a wrap.
It was nobody. Find us on Kickstarter.